What obstacles make it difficult to operate a food truck? So in this video for Food Truck Freaks, we're going to give you some tips and pointers, 5 specifically, that are going to help you operate your food truck efficiently and bypass these difficulties before you experience them. We're going to get into that right now. All right, so welcome back to Food Truck Freaks. We are YouTube's premier food truck entrepreneur channel. And in this video, we're actually going to give you 5 specific things you really need to be aware of. These are going to be obstacles that you could potentially face when starting and launching your food truck. And in some cases, if you're already up and running with your food truck business, you may actually encounter some of these along the way if you haven't already. So definitely hit the subscribe button if this is your first video. My name is Damian Roberti. I'm the founder and CEO of Marketing Food Online here on YouTube and Food Truck Freaks. We have a multitude of food entrepreneur channels. You definitely want to check out those links down below in the description. So let's dive right into it, guys. I don't want to waste your time. We're going to get into number 5. We're going to go from 5 down to number 1, the most important thing to think of when you're looking to launch your food truck business. So number 5, you need to seriously consider the layout of your kitchen. Now, what does that mean, Damian, specifically? Well, here's the thing. The more specific and more efficient your kitchen is laid out within your food truck, that's going to allow you to produce your product faster and give it to your customers on a much quicker basis, allowing you to turn over more plates and more food faster at any food truck event. The way that your food truck is laid out will help you reduce effort, reduce time, make sure that your team, if you happen to be doing this with maybe more than yourself, if it's 1 or 2 other additional employees, producing the food product in an efficient way is only conducive to how your food truck is laid out and the steps and procedures that you put together in order to make your food. So what does that mean if you've already got a used food truck? Okay, I'll give you a couple examples. If you're buying a used food truck and you have to revamp the inside and you're going to restore it, or maybe you're going to customize it, make sure you keep in mind the processes for you to produce your food product, whatever that is on your menu, the food items, and how you lay out the truck in that specific way. Because that's going to lend itself to your team working much faster and with less waste, of course, and also turn over much more money at events when you've got that laid out in a more efficient manner. So one of the barriers to entry when you start a food truck business, and of course, is going to be the way that your kitchen is actually laid out. So you need to keep that in mind when your food truck is being built, or if you're redoing it or restoring it and constructing it from the ground up. Make sure you keep that in mind as well. Now, always another thing, really quick side note, you can always change your menu as you go. So if you've got if you've got your kitchen laid out in a certain way to create a certain menu of items, don't be scared, don't hesitate to try something else new just because of the way the kitchen's laid out. You can always use that to your advantage when you're developing or building a different type of menu, okay? Number 4, doing it all alone, doing it yourself all alone by yourself. Okay, you can only do so much as a single sole proprietor or a single person LLC. You know, if you developed your business that way, you cannot do everything. You're going to need to have some help. You may feel as though you can do that at first, and you're going to drive the truck there, you're going to prepare all the food, you're going to drive it home, you're going to customer service, ring up the register. That's way too much. Many times the barriers to entry are the ability for you as a food truck entrepreneur, even just as an entrepreneur, is to ask for help. I can attest to this too, because when I started my business, my wife and I started it, it was just the 2 of us, and I really didn't want to bring anyone else on board. But as the business grew, I needed part-time help. I needed some help. It just was not cutting it. So as your business grows, or from the get-go, try not to do everything yourself, because that is going to be a barrier to entry for your success. If you are not going to allow others to help you along the way, there's no need for ego when it comes to food entrepreneurship. Trust me, just put that ego to the side. Know that you're there to grow your business, and you should do whatever it takes to do that. And if that happens to be part-timers, then so be it. If it happens to be a full-time person, then an additional chef or cook, or even someone to help you with the customer service and the truck, whatever the tasks may be, you need to kind of delegate that. Don't try to do it all by yourself. All right, so number 3, this is one of the most hard things to do. This is the most balancing act ever. Menus and your inventories that you're going to maintain, the menu that you're going to offer. This is one of the biggest challenges, even if the business that we've got online, or e-commerce food business, and including our bakery. When I had my bakery, it was a huge challenge to bring in enough inventory, but not too much, because you don't want the ingredients to spoil. Everything that we did was made fresh to order. You know, there's a fine line. It's a balancing act. But try to keep it, here's a little quick hint. Your menu will dictate the type of inventory that you're going to have. okay? And I know that sounds like a no-brainer, but here's what I mean. The more simplistic and fewer ingredients, then the better off you are in maintaining quality of your product and having inventory to sell. Does that make sense? Because the more involved and the more intricate your menu becomes, the more processes, the more products, the more ingredients, it becomes very difficult to source all of these different things just to create a single menu for your food truck. So if you can simplify the menu and the ingredients that it takes to sustain and fulfill that menu, then you're going to be better off and you're just going to be profitable. Because think of it this way. Let's just say you were doing tacos, burritos, and some street food of that sort. And you had lettuce, tomatoes, cheese, protein, like a chicken or a beef, tortilla shells, you've got sauces, you've got seasoning. It begins to be very overwhelming, especially when you're trying to maintain quality and being in stock of those products on your food truck, because your food truck can only hold so much inventory, right? It's not a restaurant. It's not a storage place. You don't have walk-in coolers and freezers like you do in restaurants, okay? So that's going to be on the curb. That's curbside. You're not going to have any chance to do that. You have very limited space. So having the right inventory to sustain your menu is really going to be critical for you to get through that barrier of entry when you first start out. Now, of course, this is going to be experimental. You're going to have to try it out. Sometimes some events you may overdo it. Some events you may go too short. You may not have enough inventory. You may not have enough product for your menu. So it's going to be a balancing act, but it's always best to minimize the actual ingredients to create your menu. All right, so next up, this is also a very, very challenging thing. And one of the hurdles and hoops to kind of jump through is going to be understanding regulations and permits in your city and county, and of course the state, okay? This is a big challenge for food trucks in general because a lot of states, believe it or not, for instance, here's an example. You get a business license in one city and you cross over a city line into another. Many states are going to require you to have multiple business licenses, yes, believe it or not, in every single city you're going to operate in. That is a big challenge to maintain. And of course, those are normally annual business licenses. So every year, you're going to have to also remember to renew those, okay? Things like seller's permits. You're also going to have liability insurance. What type of insurances do you need outside of that? Licenses and permits specifically to register the food truck itself. The DMV with driver's licenses. Do you need a commercial food truck license or can you just use your regular license? Do you have to have a food safety training course? Believe it or not, in some cities and counties, they don't require that. In some they do, and you'd have to take that through ServSafe, and on and on and on. So permits and regulations have a big hurdle when it comes to trying to get into the food truck industry because it gets confusing. But once you understand which ones you need, you're up and running, you're good to go. The challenge then is just simply remembering to renew your permits and licenses so you don't go overlap and expired, okay? Lastly, number one, the biggest hurdle to a food truck industry is locations that are profitable. Location. Trying to find the right location, as everyone says. Get this, here's a myth. There is no right location. You're going to need to experiment. You're going to need to drive around the city or county that you're in. You're going to have to do a little research on this because this is not something that's just magically going to say, hey, 53rd and 38th Street, that's going to be the place for you, man. That's the gold mine. That's nonsense. Every location is going to vary by also seasonality. Where are you located in that season? Also, whether or not you could be closer to restaurants or busy areas like corporate buildings, they may limit that, so that becomes a challenge. Cities like in Miami or Los Angeles or New York, they have restricted areas where you've already got eateries and restaurants, and they are not going to allow you to be within 1,000, 1,500, or 2,000 feet of anything. So that's the challenge. The biggest hurdle when you start to create your food truck business and try to make it profitable is, simply put, number one is the location and the challenges that come up trying to find that specific location, the one that's really going to be fruitful and beneficial for you to be there 8, 9, 10 hours. Is it going to make you money, or is you just going to do $100 a day? I mean, it's not going to cut it. So can you get in certain locations? Yes. Do you also need parking permits in some locations? Yes, you're also going to need to have a permit for the parking. Not every city and county will just allow you to simply pull up in a street and start selling your food. And if you get caught with it, or if you get a health department inspection that's random and they find out that you don't have the right permits, you can get fined. So location is one of the big hurdles food trucks take a look at whenever they start their business. Now, of course, these are 5 things to think about. I don't want to deter you or steer you away from starting a food truck business. Just be aware of these things. That's all. And these are going to be some hurdles you'll run into. So if you've started a food truck business and if you've ran into any of these 5 things, definitely let me know down below, guys. Comment. We have a brand new channel here at Food Truck Freaks, and if you know a friend of yours who could benefit from our food truck information, let us know. And I'll see you guys on our next video.